All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar about the Better Life Labs reporting grants. We've got a new round that we are just launching. And so we've been fielding a lot of individual emails, and we thought it would be a great idea to just have a webinar and be able to take all sorts of questions all at once. This will be recorded, so we can also share it with people. It's meant to be really informal. We welcome all of your questions. As you heard, put any questions in the Slido box, and we will get to as many as we can during this hour. So let me just begin. My name is Bridget Schulte. I'm a longtime journalist and author, and I'm the director of the Better Life Lab at New America, where we use the power of research and journalism and storytelling on work, family, gender, and care to move public policy, shape workplace practices and cultural attitudes so that we can create systems where all people and all families will have time for meaningful work and time for care and connection across the arc of their lives. So let me start by telling you a little bit about what the reporting grants are and how we got started. So Emily, if we could have the first slide, please. So at the Better Life Lab, like I mentioned, we're all about narrative change and about using really good storytelling, journalism, data, and evidence to try to move culture, policy, and practice. We're a pretty small team, small but mighty. And one of the things that we try to do, again, with narrative change is that we are not only the ones doing the research, the reporting, the storytelling, but several years ago, we also realized we wanted to help build capacity for storytelling and journalism. We saw a particular need that many of these issues were not really covered very well or very often. They're deeply complex. They're very nuanced to try to understand childcare funding, for instance. It takes a while to kind of get up to speed because the policies are very complicated. And so what we were finding is that there wasn't a lot of coverage to begin with, pretty lonely out there. And so then there wasn't a lot of understanding about how things worked or how they could work better. And so what we began to do is to, again, build capacity in the storytelling core. We wanted to support independent journalists and storytellers. And since we started initially with paid leave. And what we generally do is say, here's a topic. Here's what we're going to be reporting and writing about. This is what we're exploring. And we'll offer some reporting grants to others who are also willing to explore on this particular topic. So, for instance, the very first set of reporting grants that we offered was around paid family and medical leave. And the challenge was find two people or two situations where one person, that are very similar with a caregiving responsibility, and say one person had access to a paid family and medical leave, either through an employer or a state policy, and another did not, and just tell their stories. And we ended up getting some really powerful stories. And we helped people shape them when they requested it. We helped them pitch to different publications when they requested it. And it was so powerful that we decided this is something that we wanted to continue. We were able to support diverse voices and tell a variety of different stories, and then get them placed in a variety of different places that could really reach a lot more audiences. So it increased our reach and our influence and the engagement in these issues. Starting in 2021, we began a new series of reporting grants. We had done a big project the year before looking at innovations in childcare. This is right after the big Build Back Better bill failed at the federal level. And there was sort of a lot of talk about how the childcare movement or the care movement was dead and nothing was happening. And we wanted to explore if that was really true. Coming as journalists, you want to follow the data and what's really happening. And so we began looking across the country at state, local jurisdictions, county level, and really asking, was anybody doing anything interesting to support or find solutions to the childcare crisis? And we ended up finding so many interesting things happening. Some were great, some were not so perfect, but a lot of movement, a lot of discussion. And we ended up writing an entire huge report. And at the end of that report, we realized we'd only scratched the surface. And that's when we began offering another round of reporting grants, which we have done every year now since 2021, just looking at childcare solutions and innovations. And what we counted up what we did just last summer, and we were surprised ourselves. So in that period, just from 2021 to June of 2025, we supported more than 20 different independent storytellers and journalists. Together with the work that we have done at the team, we've produced 66 stories that have appeared in 28 different publications, uh, with a really wide variety of audiences. And we've been featuring innovations and solutions into childcare in 26 different states, as well as Puerto Rico and the District of Columbia. So we're really able to show a wide variety of, kind of covering a lot of ground. We've been supporting journalists who live in rural areas or who are across the country and can really dig into their own communities. And one of the reasons why we found this work so powerful and so important is that when you look at what's happening with the media landscape, so many local outlets, media outlets have closed. And what the research will show is that most people have the most trust for their local newspaper, radio station, TV station. And once they're gone, people tend to like nationalize you, so they know more what's happening at the national level than even in their own local level. So we're trying to help fill that void by, coming in with really good local journalism and trying to find outlets where people, where there will be that greater sense of trust. If we could have the next slide. So one of the things that we started to do again last summer when we saw the breadth of the kinds of stories that we've been writing and also supporting, we began to collect all of them in what we're calling a care innovation hub. So you can see up to this point, we've been focusing on childcare. And what's really exciting about this new round of reporting grants that we're going to be talking about today is that we want to be looking at care across the life cycle. One of the things that we've found that really works for our storytelling, for our journalism, is that we try to combine really compelling stories about people and their actual experiences. So character-driven stories. We try to combine that with research, evidence, some data, so that there's a really strong spine that people can't just say, well, this is just a one-off anecdote. So we try to connect it to a larger body of evidence or really rigorous research. We also try to have some kind of policy insight. Is there a lesson that we can learn? Is someone doing something at a local level that could potentially scale toward a bigger, better, say, a universal care system? What could we learn? Is something not working, and what could work better? So some kind of policy insight. And then, several years ago, we began really focusing on solutions, looking at bright spots, looking at innovations, even if they're small. We were really influenced by the research that the Solutions Journalism Network puts out that shows that when you focus only on the problem, that can be really deflating. And it can be, you sort of feel like, well, it's just the way things are, nothing can change. But if you focus on a bright spot or a solution, no matter how small, the energy changes and it shows, wow, maybe there's something I can hope for. Or look at their people are working on something, or there's an interesting kind of way to come at a problem. And maybe there is hope. We can help people imagine something different and bigger and better. So those are sort of the four elements that we look for in stories and in the stories that we do. And then we do compile, and this is going to be sort of a living hub. We still are in the process of putting some of our previous work on here, but we also want this hub to be a resource for policymakers or business leaders, because there's public-private solutions here. There are public solutions. So we want people to feel like this is a place that they can come. We want reporters to feel we've got resources on the bottom, links to other really good places to look, for stories and look for data. So we want this to be a resource that can help more people tell more stories and do them in a more complex way with a lot of nuance. But then have this as a hub, so we'll feature your work here as well. That it can be a place that we can build from. And then if I could have the last slide. So here, this is just how you can follow us. We have a newsletter that comes out called Your Life Better. We are on LinkedIn, Instagram, and on X, although less so on X lately. But we're very interested in being part of and shaping the national conversations at state and local levels. And at this point, let me just say what we're really looking for in this next round of reporting grants, and then I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Rebecca Gale, who can tell you more about the nitty-gritty. For these grants, we're really looking for big swings, if you will, trying to look at, again, what's really interesting that's happening at the state level, the local level, jurisdictions that could really help unlock sort of a once in a generation investment in care infrastructure, in child care, in elder care, in disability care, in any kind of, in any kind of infrastructure that can really help all of us in our ability to combine work and care or make time and space and value the care that we all need and that we all either will give or receive at some point in our lives. So let me turn it over to Rebecca at this point, and we can stop the slide share.
Thanks, Bridget. For those of you I have not met, I'm Rebecca Gale. I work at the Better Life Lab with Bridget Schulte, and a lot of my portfolio includes managing the reporting grants, which is honestly one of the best parts of the job because it allows me to work with a lot of reporters and content creators who are out there basically reporting and understanding and digging in deep on the most interesting stuff happening on these issues. And a lot of us who work here and subscribe to this notion that these quality stories can help shift the narrative. The more people realize that, for instance, childcare is a necessary part of the economy. It's good for families, it's good for kids, it's good for teachers, it's good for businesses. The more we get there, the more we can actually see public policy start to catch up to where we are. And one of the best ways we get there is to the power of storytelling. So here's how the reporting grants work. We have reporters, and it could be anybody, it can be a traditional print reporter, it can be somebody who is a freelancer, somebody connected to a news outlet, somebody who is a content creator, somebody who's doing something different. We've had people do audio stories, we've had videos. And they will come to us and apply with a pitch. They will say, here's the story I want to explore, and here's where I want to do it. Maybe here's some ideas of where it can run. And I'll get to some places where we've had stories run. And then we will either take the pitch, and sometimes we ask people to refine it. Sometimes we take it as is. And then if accepted, the person who is a reporting grantee becomes part of our cohort. So we have interactions. We are a resource. People who are newer voices, we help refine pitch. We help refine the pitch. We help send it out to places. We help think of outlets that might take it. People who are more senior reporters may not need as much help, but still we're happy to be a sounding board. Either way, when the work does come out, we help promote it. We have promoted it across our channels. We promote it in our newsletter. And once the story runs in any sort of external publication, the reporter writes up a paragraph about their process, sends it over, and then we send them the money. So I should be very upfront that these reporting grants are paid upon publication. And in general, we've had reporting grant stories run in everything from major outlets like the Washington Post and New York Magazine to local outlets like the Daily Yonder. We've had stories run in Idaho. We've had stories run in publications in Minnesota and I'm trying to think of some more. In North Carolina, various states, I mean, on the map in front of me, but all over the place. We've also had stories run in more traditional national publications that cover things like childcare and early education, but also national publications that cover a childcare story in reference to something else. Like we've had in health publications and State Line. So it's a wide variety, but the goal is to have that variety. And the goal is that the variety of publications are achieved by having a variety of reporters working on this topic. And as Bridget said, it's not just childcare this year, it's carrying across generations, or carrying across any ages, essentially. So people who are doing care for elder care and the sandwich generation. The idea is caregiving is work, and how do we really elevate what kind of work this is and who are the people doing it? So I encourage anyone to apply, and I'm happy, I know now we're happy to take questions. In terms of specific pitch questions, I'd really recommend someone send that in and we can talk about it after it's sent in. But in the process, I really want to answer. But the biggest thing is like we want to be in touch with you. The Better Life Lab works so well because we engage with quality reporters, and we help also elevate people who want to be quality reporters and maybe need a little more time or a little more encouragement. So even if you've never published something, or if you've published something all of the time, there's a place for you in this reporting grant process. And I should point out that Bridget has pointed out there are a few more publications that have they're worth mentioning on a national level, like The Guardian and The Atlantic. And we have taken multimedia projects on before. We've had a short documentary. We've also had that's fun at film festivals. We had a second short documentary, which is like meant to be a trailer that hopefully gets turned into a larger documentary. Those those projects have been really neat. And they often come to us through someone saying, "Can we do this?" And we're like, "Yeah, we really want to work with you." So again, this is a chance to like put your application in and we can talk about it. We've also done graphic stories, something that we would have probably never tried without reporting grants because it was such a risk. And the first time we tried them, it took us a really long time to find a home for it. And I am a freelancer. Like I'm deeply used to going out to bat and asking people to publish my story. And this graphic story, like I could not find anyone for so long. But then guess what? We did it. We did it once and it was a huge hit. And now we're doing it again and again. So it opened this door for us that wouldn't have been there. And I should also say that I am a previous reporting grantee. Back when I was fully freelance, Bridget and Haley Swenson approached me about taking part in the paid family leave childcare reporting, or not childcare, paid family leave reporting grants. And I was like, okay, like you mean you pay me to write a story in on top of anything else the publication pays? I should add that the publication pays the reporter, they get to keep all of that. The Better Life Lab money is on top of that. So you can get paid twice, you can get paid much more depending on how much the publication pays. And so for me, it was like great. And with Bridget's help, actually, I got my first story in the New York Times, which was pretty amazing, both at the time and in hindsight. So I believe deeply in the power of reporting grants. They've been hugely helpful for me in my career. And they're, like I said, they're really fun to do. One thing we will be adding this year is we're going to add more checkpoints, check-in points to make it a little more automated rather than me sending emails, how's it going? We'll probably pick a handful of dates and have the reporters reach out to us with how they're doing. That just keeps us on a more of a schedule and flow. But the reality is we do allow people to have a lot of time if they need it, and we can always talk about extensions. Um, I did, again, if you have questions, feel free to throw them in, but I did want to actually pass the microphone to Elliot, who has been a reporting grantee of ours and has now, is a great example of a reporter who has articles in many different outlets, and he can talk a bit about his process and how even being a seasoned reporter, why being a part of the reporting grants process has been helpful. So Elliot?
Yeah. Thank you, Rebecca. Yes, hi. For those who don't know me, I'm Elliot Haspel. I'm a fellow with New America's Better Life Lab. And yeah, so I was a reporting grantee a couple years back. And, I kind of was in this interesting spot where I do a lot. I do some reported news articles. I also do a lot of analysis articles. And the reporting grantee process really helped me with making connections. I remember with Rebecca's help of reviewing some of those articles, and I was placed in Fast Company, and that helped make a connection. And I ended up writing for Fast Company several times after that. So that's an example of kind of starting that, kind of opening that door into a relationship. I was also able to, even with one outlet that I already had a relationship with, what was then Early Learning Nation, what is now 0 to 8, part of the 74 million, able to work on some more stories they would have otherwise been able to work on and get more feedback on those in collaboration. So, I think it's just, again, I kind of agree with Rebecca and Bridget. Like, if I encourage you to apply if you are at all interested, it's a really a great process, and having that support and having that network. Which really I think builds more durable relationships, is something that I've really taken out of it. And it started a relationship with the Bear Life Lab that is now led to me being a fellow with them. So I really I encourage you to take advantage of the opportunity, and I just say that like Rebecca, Bridget, the whole team are incredibly accessible, warm, like friendly people. And so I think everyone's trying to head in the direction of telling these important stories. So yeah, that's what I would say.
I want to add one thing that Elliot said is that people who work in this space are really excited by other great stories in the space. So that is, I feel like this idea that journalism is really competitive with one another hasn't been my experience in policy journalism, especially this type of policy. So we are rooting for you to have an amazing story out there because it helps us do our jobs too. So.
Yeah, thank you so much, Elliot and Rebecca. I want to pick up on one of the things that Elliot mentioned. He talked about a network. And so one of the things that we do offer is a network of some of the connections we've made in the media community. And that's an ongoing process. We're continually looking for and making partnerships. There's a lot of churn in the media, but so we're constantly working on those relationships and finding and making connections. And so we can help you with that. But the other part that I think that is really valuable that I've been really excited by, again, thinking about the power of networks, we're able to help a lot of reporters who might feel very isolated or very alone find a peer network. People who are also really interested in learning and writing about these kinds of issues around care, work, family, gender, and care. I spent a lot of my career in daily newspapers. I was at the Washington Post. I worked for Night Reader newspapers for a long time. And these were not issues that people tended to cover. They were not sort of traditional beats. And you really had to fight for getting stories like this in. There's not a whole lot of natural news. And if there is, it's often like the political news and the political folks cover it and they don't quite get it. And so we're sort of trying to create something new here, sort of childcare as a beat, as Rebecca and our colleague Haley Swinson wrote a wonderful piece in the Columbia Journalism Review a couple of years ago about why it's important to develop expertise in these issues. But one of the great things is bringing people together who have this interest, who want to be, learn and share about reporting on these issues, and we'll bring them together. We've had virtual workshops, if you will, with kind of a cohort of reporting grantees. People share best practices, like, what's the one paragraph that you use to describe how the system works or doesn't work, and really there's a lot of camaraderie and helping one another. And just recently, we were really excited, along with the Bainham Family Foundation. We co-hosted a care reporter convening, and we brought about, close to 40 reporters from across the country who either cover care, childcare directly, or it's sort of tangential to their beats. And we brought them all here to New America in Washington, D.C. And it was so powerful to just have a lot of people who, again, work sometimes alone and in isolation, particularly freelancers, and have them be part of a community where everybody was really pulling for one another. There was a lot of learning, a lot of people walking around with arm in arm, which was very exciting, and that's something that we're going to continue to build on and grow. And just about every single one of our reporting grantees was invited to that convening, so we're hoping to do more of that in the future as well. So, Rebecca, over to you again.
Well, we did get our first question from the audience, and it was somebody who asked, I'm at the entry level as a reporter. What advice can you give me on help to develop my pitch? And a good pitch, so there's a little bit of subjective answer here, but a good pitch has the headline you'd want to see and something that looks like the lead paragraph of a story. A mistake I see people do a lot is they give a lot of context in the first pitch of like, childcare is a major issue that a lot of people deal with. A really good first pitch to me, a really good first paragraph / strong pitch to me sort of grabs the reader right away and centers it in like, so many, like, X number of people can't find childcare in this location, and one place is looking for a difference. I would include what the problem is, what the solution is, potentially a bit of the like tone that you would be using and taking it. Some people have like more stories in there. If you've actually interviewed anybody just in the pitch pre-reporting, it'd be great to include a quote from somebody that way. Like that to me shows that you've done some work already on it. And then after like the first meaty paragraph, I then include like a line or two about like this story is going to explore and include a few pieces of it. But that to me is what a great pitch looks like, because you can tell right away, like, oh, this is a story I'd want to read. And this is somebody who's already done a little bit of work, so they know what the story is going to entail. An anonymous said, do you request that applicants submit one pitch? Or we have a couple ideas, we're excited, do you want to see more than one? Typically, they've asked for just one. If there's a case where they are two completely different stories on two different topics, I would submit both, especially since this time around we have both childcare and care across the life cycle. But in general, I would pick your strongest one and go with it. If it is a very strong pitch and we want to see the topic shifted for any reason, we'll write back and talk to you about it. And then I see another question. To what degree are you open about stories that highlight new ideas, solutions that they have to be implemented? Very open to that. Even solutions that have not been implemented, usually there's some reason as to why someone's putting the solution forward. We have plenty of solutions that we write about that have been implemented on a very tiny case, like one childcare, one city, one state. And those stories are great because those people who have implemented some solution have something to say about it. And that's really how stories scale. So the answer is yes. A solution that has never been implemented before, like someone's just thinking about it, I think you would need to put some research in to show my work. But again, like the without knowing the solution you're referring to, I'm open to hearing more about why this could be a great one.
And one thing, if I could jump in here, I think that's really important. Like when we talk about focusing on solutions and innovations, this is not about being Pollyanna. This is not about like, oh, this is great, let's all do this, because we know that these are challenging problems. There's a childcare crisis that's been ongoing for several years. So the stories that we're looking for are deeply grounded in understanding the breadth and depth of the challenge, and then really helping to understand here's a solution and it may be imperfect, and using the reporting to also explore that. So it's true journalism. I think even though we're in a nonprofit, we're sort of like a nonprofit newsroom in this sense. We're not advocating for a particular point of view that you have to go out and find. We really want you to follow the stories and the data like any good independent journalist would. But I would say that sometimes people think, oh, solutions journalism, it has to be, all butterflies and, and rainbows. And it's really important that there's a level of reporting and analysis that really can understand, why there's some promise, but also what potential pitfalls would be. And Elliot, let me bring you in here because you just wrote a story like that, and that was difficult to do. But can you talk about the story you most recently wrote about New Mexico?
Yeah, and some of you may have seen I wrote an article for The Atlantic on New Mexico's universal childcare rollout. And so trying to hold, essentially sort of two ideas in tension, like one, like what that progress actually represents and why it was historic and important, and then also what are the actual implementation challenges and to what extent, does the headlines that we've been seeing sort of actually reflect the reality on the ground? And that was, I think was interesting, and even in working with my editors at The Atlantic, like they they were really pushing me to like be very clear on, yes, like let's celebrate the things that are not celebrate, but let's point out the things that are new here and that are innovative, and let's also be clear-eyed about the challenges ahead. And I think that's one of the um, real sort of roles here. And I think that's where, the distinction between, reported news, analysis, opinion, right? Like it's a continuum. And I think in our modern media environment, it's not always quite as clear cut. I think those stories are really important. Like I think that uh, we have to understand what's happening on the ground if we're going to help the public be informed so that they're in turn, pushing and holding policymakers accountable to implement actual programs that are effective. And obviously, journalists aren't advocates, and so I think that's also an important kind of distinction that uh, I had to sort of wrestle with that piece as well. So who knows if I hit the mark, but like that was definitely, something that was I was thinking through a lot, and it's helpful. I mean, Rebecca again. Obviously not in a reporting grantee right now, but now a colleague like Rebecca reviewed a very early draft of that piece and gave me really good feedback. So it gets to that network, effect.
Great. Thanks so much, Elliot. So we've got a couple other questions. One says, are you open to care pitches from Africa and the UK? So this is a tough one. We do have international reporting that we've done, but we are really focused on the US context. We are really focused on how do we get solutions here in the United States. So if there's something happening overseas that there's a lesson to be learned from, or there's somebody in the United States that's interested or trying to implement something that happened overseas, we would be more likely to be open to a pitch or a conversation. But if it's just something cool that's happening overseas and doesn't have a US connection, that really is not a good fit for us. So uh, anything that's happening internationally, again, there's a lot to be learned. There's a lot of really good research that happens internationally, but we would want you to then take another beat or, another few clicks of thinking like, how does that translate here in the United States?
We got a question about can childcare policy research who are not journalists apply? And the answer is yes, and we hope you do. And the reason is so many great researchers have this fascinating cadre of information, and they have not always had the experience, time, or energy to turn it into a story. And as a journalist, that's always one of the first places I go for looking for story ideas. But if you would like the opportunity to really practice getting your research turned into a story that will go to a journalistic audience, a journalistic publication for a different audience, we'd love to have you apply. So please do consider that. And Bridget can also talk a bit about how we work with academics in our workshops previously and the success we've had with that.
Yeah, so we also as part of the role that we play at the Better Life Lab, we also have developed and we train people in reporting and writing, opinion writing, op-ed work. We've worked a lot with academics. We've gone to different academic conferences and given these workshops. And some of our most successful stories that we've worked with people and helped them pitch have come from academics who have that deep research, but then we help them storify it, if you will, and help translate it from a white paper and kind of a rigorously written academic piece into something that the general public can really resonate with, usually through story. So we've had some really successful pieces from academics. We'd absolutely encourage you to apply, but again, really think about this is for a general audience. We're really trying to educate and raise awareness through, to a variety of different, publics and audiences out there. So think very much about the general audience. And then one thing, talking about sort of, the different types of storytellers that have had reporting grants before, I want to turn it back over to Rebecca because I think just in the past year, one of our most powerful stories was really a personal essay written by a childcare provider. So let me turn it back over to Rebecca to talk about. We are open to those kinds of stories, those kinds of sort of more personal essays, when they are really right on the mark. So Rebecca, do you want to talk more about that?
Yes, and if I could sort of sum up a lot of the questions that were coming in, if you want to write a good story and you want to craft a good pitch and you have a story to tell, like please submit it. Like the actual parameters of it, whether you're a freelance journalist attached to a newsroom, academic or brand new trying to share a personal story, like focus on making a great story, and that's the kind of work we're really looking to uplift and support in this way. So pitches relating to personal stories are fantastic. They're a great hook. They're a great opening. It really sheds it really brings a narrative to the experience. And also, I found that reporters who have the personal issue do some of the best digging because they're sort of trying to figure the issue out themselves. So that's something I would definitely encourage. And someone else asked if we support with pitches from reporters in newsrooms or freelancing. It's either. If you're in a newsroom, it's probably slightly different. Like the idea that you would use this funding maybe to do something a little bit different than your regular beat. You would maybe give you an expansion opportunity. But also, if you're writing these stories, we want to support your work too. Not as many reporters in traditional newsrooms cover childcare, so it's possible that maybe you are a K through 12 reporter and this allows you to do a childcare story. Maybe you are a childcare reporter and this allows you to do a bigger childcare story. And I'm sorry, I think there was one more question. I'm sorry. Somebody asked if they could resubmit a pitch if something happened. Yes, if you need to resubmit a pitch with an update, just do that and explain it's an update. Like I said, we're a small team, but the goal is to engage a lot of people in this process, but we want you to feel comfortable doing so. So the biggest thing I hope you leave with is like, I should submit my story. I should think about how to make the story excellent and then submit it. A quick word on timelines too. We are still collecting pitches. We are hoping to start awarding them in December. It is a rolling process. So if in January you haven't submitted and we still have funds available, like by all means, please do. Bridget, do you want to take the question that just came in?
Sure. We have another question that says, I'm a volunteer caregiver for a friend with dementia. His memory declined and friends arranged for care. Are you interested in personal stories? So this is sort of to build on some of the previous questions. We are absolutely open to that. The personal stories, they really do connect with readers because people can put themselves in your shoes. And, like Rosalind Carter said, we're either going to be people who give care or people who receive care in our lives. So that's everybody. And that the stories are what really make so many of the pieces really compelling and really help people understand how care is such a critical issue for the economy, for communities, for family stability, for quality of life, that they're really central to our way of life. what I would say about a personal essay, it really depends. There are personal essays that are done with such craft that the essay itself is really powerful. And then there are other times I think it's really important that you find a way for your story as as sort of a universal stand-in for a number of other stories. So it's sort of like it's a fine line. You don't want something to be just, I think we've all seen that writing that just sort of feels more self-indulgent. You're like, why do I care about what you had for breakfast? So but if you can write a compelling story that really shows how, there's a universality to your story, that's something that I think would be a much stronger pitch. Rebecca or Elliot, do you have anything that you would want to add to that?
I can add quickly that anecdotally, for a long time, I was just the reporter. Like I didn't really bring my own life into it at all. I felt like that was like the level of professionalism I really wanted to maintain. And it's really been over the past few years and like conversations with like Bridget and our team where I've been talking about something going on in my own life. And Bridget's like, you should use that in your reporting. You should write a story about that. You should do that. And you know what? These stories that have my personal pieces in them get the most feedback out of any of them. And the stories that I write when I sometimes can give personal aspects of other people's lives do also get that response too. People love seeing the inner workings of someone, a moment of vulnerability, especially when done well. But if you're comfortable using your own experience, I would recommend doing so. And there's so many ways to do it in a way that maintains that professionalism, that high level of reporting. There's so much data out there and studies to dig into. I know, Elliot, do you want to talk a bit about how you've decided when or when not to use your own personal story in reporting?
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of cases, it does depend what outlet I'm writing for, and usually I am doing more dispassionate analysis or reporting, so I rarely bring in that. I mean, I do on like my Substack and things like that, but I haven't. But to your point, like I've seen, and I think like Business Insider, a few of those like outlets you wouldn't expect that look for a lot of like the first person stories, and I absolutely agree they can be incredibly powerful to bring in if deployed correctly. So I echo what both of you said there.
Um, I don't know if we have any other questions, but I really appreciate you guys coming out today and listening to this. And I really encourage people who are interested in this process to apply. Either way, you'll hear from us, and we are really committed to bringing more quality stories on these topics out to the world. Bridget, do you have anything else you want to add?
Yeah, so I think we had scheduled the full hour, but we're really here for answering questions. So if you're watching this, if you weren't able to make the live session and you're watching it on video, please feel free to reach out to any of us via email. If there were questions that you have that we weren't able to answer. Rebecca also has a frequently asked question sort of document that she put together. Can we add a link to that and share that with you all? That can be really helpful. So we are accessible, but I would also just caution you that we are a very small team and we are also trying to do reporting and writing. So that's one of the reasons we wanted to do this webinar is to try to capture as many questions as we can. We're really excited about these grants and the power that they've had, and we're really excited to build on them. This is the first time we've done reporting grants outside of childcare, beyond childcare. So we're going to be learning as we go. And I think that's one of the exciting things. We call ourselves a lab for a reason. We're experimenting and we're always learning and iterating. Um, so, Elliot and Rebecca have Substacks. You might want to take a look at some of their work. Like I mentioned, we have a newsletter that comes out. That's a great way to get information about us as well. We do have a website, and we're in the process, the whole New America is in the process of updating it. So hopefully next year it will be a little bit more intuitive and easier to find things. But that's a work in progress. So we're really grateful for all of you to have shown up today. And again, reach out with pitches. We're excited to hear from you and looking forward to having you join our care reporting community. So thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you guys so much. Thanks to New
Thanks,
America Med
y'all.
team as
Yeah, have a good
well.
weekend.
All right, take care.